Welcome to the Student Ministry Podcast. This is episode 66 of the Student Ministry Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Cullum, and today is a very special day. Not only are we starting our 6th year of this podcast, but also we are bringing back a guest to kind of celebrate, but also catch up. His name is Aaron Stetson. Aaron joined us for the very first podcast, the very first episode of this podcast, and it's so great to see what God is doing in his life and to catch up today on this episode. So you're going to enjoy hearing what God has been doing in Aaron's life. He's definitely been up to some really good things in and through Aaron over the last several years, the last 5 years since we've talked. So kind of cool to catch up with our first guest ever on this podcast and hear all those stories about what God's done in his life. He's currently not actually in vocational youth ministry anymore. He was doing bivocational ministry at the time, being a youth pastor, but also an electrician. And that things have kind of changed over the last couple years for him. Specifically during this last year, he made a pretty big move. I'll let him tell all those details to you in just a little bit, but I know not only is it going to be cool to hear his story, but also he's got some great opportunities for you guys out there that are looking for ways to get your students serving and giving back, especially when big needs arise. And not only your students, but also other adults in your church. Maybe you can help out with natural disaster relief and things like that, or help out with some different outreach programs that they have through this new organization that he has, that he's working through now. And so I won't take any away from what he's going to tell you, to just know that it's going to be a great conversation today with Aaron Stetson. But before we jump into any of that, I just want to thank you guys so much for making this podcast happen. I mean, a good reason why we are starting year 6 in this episode is because of you. You keep coming back, you keep subscribing, you keep sharing this with other youth workers out there, and I am so grateful to just be able to do this. And in large part, that is because you are the audience are just so incredibly helpful and supportive. You send us people that we should talk to and interview, and it's such an awesome opportunity to be able to do this. So thank you guys so much. I don't know where the future holds, but here we are starting year 6. So thank you guys so much for that. If you have not done so yet, I would encourage you to leave a positive review on your favorite podcast app. Maybe that's Apple Podcast, or maybe it's Spotify, or whatever, wherever you listen to this podcast, or maybe you actually watch the video version, which is not actually video. It's just a static image, but I do put it on my YouTube channel as well. So maybe you're watching there. Just let us know what you think, and a review is just so helpful, because that just helps us kind of be aggregated to the top of the podcast list. So if you haven't done that yet, I would encourage you to do that, and be very, very grateful. In addition to you guys, the listeners, which is a huge part of this podcast, the other reason that we're able to keep this going is because of our sponsors. So let's take a moment to thank the sponsors of this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast. Our first sponsor, G-Shades, is a youth ministry curriculum and teaching strategy focused on helping students see everyday life situations through the lens of the gospel. G-Shades has options to fit everybody. With 3 plans to choose from, this curriculum gives you the resources that you need to do what you want to do better. Do you just need message outlines, discussion guides, and games? Just $16 a month. Looking for a higher production value that includes bumper videos, Instagram devotionals, and parent guides? That's $25 a month. Or do you want an affordable youth ministry video curriculum that will help you increase your online reach during the pandemic? G-Shades has you covered for only $36 a month. You won't find youth ministry video curriculum at that price anywhere else. G-Shades really does offer something different than most of the other curriculums out there by offering this huge focus on the gospel and how to see life through the gospel. Mike Haynes is the founder of G-Shades, and you can hear more from him on episodes 32 and 55 of the Student Ministry Podcast. So head over to gshades.org. That's GSHADES.org to download season 2 of G Shades Youth Ministry curriculum and use the promo code UNITED at the checkout to get an extra $5 off. That's UNITED at the checkout to get an extra $5 off of your order. G Shades, seeing life through the lens of the gospel. Also sponsoring this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast is an app called MinHub Youth, made by a student pastor to help people like you and me. MinHub Youth helps you store and track your student, staff, and parent information, as well as attendance for your events. There are tons of features, but today I want to talk to you about the Training Academy. You can create training lessons for your leaders to go through in the app, just like an online course, but for your ministry right in the app. You can include videos, text, images, links, and even questions. Before a leader can mark a lesson as complete, they need to answer your questions, and you can see all of their responses and see which leaders have finished each training. The app is only $5 on the iOS and Android App Store, and you can use it forever on that one device without ever paying any more. But if you want to sync your database across multiple devices or with other leaders, you can sign up for the MinHub Sync service and support the Student Ministry Podcast by visiting minhubsync.com/SMP for Student Ministry Podcast. That's minhubsync.com/SMP. Thanks to both G Shades and MinHub for sponsoring this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast, and you can find links to both of them in the podcast show notes. All right, now it's time to get into this conversation with Aaron Stetson. Well, hey, Aaron, thanks so much for joining us for this episode of the podcast, and welcome back. You are our first guest.
My pleasure. I feel famous here. I was the start, and now here I am back again.
You are, and not only are you returning, but we are celebrating 5 years of the podcast. So it was 5 years ago when you first appeared on the Student Ministry Podcast. So thanks for being our first guest, and thanks for being our a guest here on the 5-year anniversary episode.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday we were setting up, trying to figure out where to put the youth room, the microphone in our youth room at the church I was serving at the time, and it's crazy to think that it's been 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And things have changed for you. Things have changed for me over those 5 years as well. But so if people are really want to know more about your story, previous to like 5 years ago, we do encourage you guys to check out episode 1. You can hear Aaron's salvation story, how he got into ministry in the first place and things like that. But Aaron, catch us up. The last thing people knew from the podcast, at least, is that you were a bivocational youth pastor in New Hampshire. And that is not the case anymore. So what's been going on in your life?
Certainly not in New Hampshire anymore. Yeah. So the short version is, or as short as I can make it, as somebody who's been in youth ministry, I don't know that I can make too much short. Through my time at my church in New Hampshire, I had served on many occasions at a outreach in Appalachia, in the southernmost city of West Virginia, with an organization called Hope Force International. And we do, or they do, not to give away anything, they do international disaster relief, and there's some ongoing projects in areas of systemic poverty. We have an ongoing mission in Mexico. We have an ongoing mission in Haiti after the earthquake, and we have an ongoing mission in Appalachia. And that's how I first got connected with what we do. My first summer, or actually my first year at my church in New Hampshire, I was told by a student, "Hey, just so you know, we go on mission trips in West Virginia." And I was kind of like, "Yes, sir. Thanks for letting me know." But in the spirit of not changing everything your first year, if you don't know that, if you're a new youth pastor, please don't change everything your first year. You'll make a lot of enemies. But in the spirit of not changing everything in the first year, I said, "Hey, let's check this out." And I just fell in love with the ministry. And then fast forward probably to about 2017, Hurricane Harvey hit Houston area. And I had an opportunity to go and deploy on the immediate response down there, cleaning out, like we call it mucking out houses in Houston that had 7 feet of water in them for a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And it just blew me away. The ministry of serving people who've lost everything. What really captivated me in that moment is serving people who just their head is spinning with everything that they have going on. And Hope Force provides physical help. So we do the dirty, nasty, ugly work of hauling out everything in your home that's been flooded for 2 weeks. And then we also have chaplains and emotional spiritual care workers who are praying with people and meeting with people. And to see those two things working together, the founder of Hope Force refers to that as the two hands of the gospel working together. So you're meeting spiritual needs and you're meeting physical needs. And either one, if you only do that, my belief is that it would be a little lopsided. So 2017, I almost made the jump. Steve lived in the same town as me, and we prayed about this. He prayed with me a lot, and it wasn't yet God's timing. I still, all in all, I still felt called to my church in New Hampshire. So fast forward, I said I would make this short, didn't I? I apologize.
That's all right.
Fast forward to early 2020, and it just was on my heart again. And my wife and I were processing. And then a tornado hit Nashville in early March of 2020, and actually almost a year ago from the time we're recording this. And I decided that I really needed to go, and I got back after a couple of days of serving down there, and my wife said, "So does this mean we're moving to Tennessee?" and we prayed about it, we agreed, and about 4 days later the world shut down. And so July of this year we made the jump, packed everything up, and we sold our house and we moved to the Nashville area. And I'm serving as the disaster response coordinator with Hope Force, leading teams on trips, going and assessing, and trying to work on some revisioning and some volunteer relations.
Cool. So Aaron, I know that over the years of doing this podcast, I've talked to a few people who have transitioned out of a career job as a youth pastor. What was that like? I know it was something that we talked about quite a bit, and you were wrestling with that and everything. Kind of walk us through a little bit of how you got to the point where you realized that, yes, God was calling you to step out of working as a job as a youth pastor, and to move into Hope Force.
Sure. I don't know if I can give specific steps, and I feel like that is always a process of prayer and discernment, and of talking to people who know you, who our pastor here in Tennessee used the phrase, "who love Jesus more than you," and so I think for me, I had a real rough several years within my church in New Hampshire. We had some staff transition in a few different ways over several years. And the big thing for me was at that point, I wasn't angry. I wasn't considering leaving out of frustration. And if you've been in youth ministry more than 10 minutes, you've experienced that probably about once a month. And so a real big thing is when it was time, I was very much at peace with where things were. I don't think we always have that luxury, but I think a big thing for me, I always kind of felt that God was calling me to youth ministry forever. And maybe that, who knows what he has for me in the future. But I got to the point where I loved my students. I loved my students, every single one of them. But I just really did not enjoy the job. I knew everything that it took because I served at that church for 10 years, and I'd had various other ministry experiences before that, volunteer, part-time, full-time, etc. but I just was in a place where the thought of preparing a talk, I didn't mind so much the talks, but all the things you need to do to have a successful student ministry, that weighed on me. And I kind of was at the point where I dreaded planning events and all the things that you use, the tools that you use to engage students. Like I said, when I was hanging out with them at youth group, once I had everything planned, I loved it. That was always the highlight of my week. But I just knew to really do this, I need to have my heart in it. And I was just in a place where my heart just wasn't in it. It didn't mean I didn't love my students. It didn't mean it wasn't really hard to feel like I was leaving them. But I just knew that I can't be, and I did this over the course of several years. So, if there's a moment of counsel, I on and impulsively quit so many times. You all do, everybody does, but take about 10 times longer than you think you should to really discern it.
That's really good advice for sure. I remember, I think it was Doug Fields early on in ministry. I heard him speak, and he's like, "Yeah, you have the ability to quit any day you want, but just be ready to start back again the next day." And but if that progresses for an extended period of time, maybe it is time to at least assess things. And I love how you said, do not do it without counsel from others that can really help you through that and pray with you through that whole process as well. So yeah, are you able to volunteer now at your church? And how does that look with, because I know your work just naturally will take you in a lot of different places and stuff like that. So are you even able to volunteer within youth ministry or anything like that?
So for the time being, yeah, exactly. The nature of my work, I travel a lot and a lot of last minute. I have my daughter. I have one kid. My daughter's 14. She's in 8th grade, and my wife and I thought about it for a while. And for this season, I've chosen not to volunteer with the student ministry. Partly, I was her youth pastor, youth director before, and in some senses to give her a little space. And we're trying to feel that out delicately, but also just for me, for an opportunity to volunteer with different areas within the church. I'm actually on the setup and takedown team. So I was earlier today, I was setting up chairs for tomorrow morning after an event that we had at church. And so it's a different type of ministry. I could very much see myself being a volunteer. I would love to be a volunteer in the future. Mm-hmm. Currently, we've made the decision that for this season, it's something to not be involved in and kind of let my daughter have her time without dad around. And mm-hmm. You can absolutely poke holes in that. It's not the best situation. It's not the best solution, but it's kind of where we landed for the time being.
For sure. Yeah. And I think everybody's family situation is different than that. And I think the same would go for other jobs like that, like teachers and stuff like that. Is like some say, oh, it's horrible to have your own family. And other times, no, it's actually was something that was really, helped and benefited our family, was to have our kids involved in that. So I think it's all kind of to each his own sort of situation. Mm-hmm. Is it weird not having, going to youth group on Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, things like that?
It is. I get real nostalgic when I pick her up and drop her off. I really miss speaking and teaching. I get an itch for that a lot. But yeah, to see, I mean, our youth pastor, Church of the City, Spring Hill, Brendan Owen, if you're listening, you are a rock star and you are my hero, and my family loves you. Just to see these guys, Brandon and Anthony, they're knocking it out of the park, and they had to cancel the Christmas party because of COVID. So they brought the Christmas party to every kid in the youth group who won. So they showed up with a minivan decked out with Christmas lights, and they handed out Christmas presents to my daughter. And as a parent, I mean, you have earned my respect forever if you can pull off something like that. So they're just doing awesome work in a really tough season. And I mean, they are the heroes, as so many of you all are. I got out just as this was all shutting down, and I can't imagine the level of intensity and the level of work trying to lead student ministry during this season it's got to be. I don't envy what you guys are doing in that sense, because it's tough work. It's hard work.
It is. Well, speaking of hard work, let's talk about what you guys do there at Hope Force International now. So you've been there almost a year, I guess, and so you kind of have a good idea of what this all looks like. So run us through what Hope Force is able to do for people in need. What do you guys? If someone asks like, what do you do with your job like now? What's that look like now?
Sure. So it's international disaster relief, and so we kind of go. I joke with people that I chase tornadoes and hurricanes. We go into as quick as possible. We're all about rapid response, and so we go right to the site of natural disasters. Most of our focus since I've been here has been tornadoes and hurricanes. It doesn't mean we don't respond to other things, but that's what 2020 has brought us, among many other things. And so we go in and we try and our main focus, when there's a wind event, we tarp roofs, shingles roofing gets peeled back, and then homes are vulnerable to more weather and water raining in. And then when there's flooding situations, we clean out houses. We do what's called mucking out, and it's hot, dirty, miserable work, but it's the thing that homeowners need the most when they're just walking around in, just kind of in awe of overwhelmed place of after having just walked through a natural disaster. And so we try and do that, bringing the love and the hope of Christ. We're not overtly, quote, evangelizing, but we have emotional, spiritual care chaplains and individuals who walk people through the steps of their grief and look for and pray for opportunities to share the gospel with them and or to encourage them in their faith. And so we try and do the hand in hand. So it's a lot of construction type of work, but we really try and look for physical needs that we can meet while simultaneously. We always get the question of, why would somebody fly to Texas from New Hampshire to come and serve little old me who just lost everything? And that's just a foot in the door for an amazing conversation of spiritual things, of about the gospel and their experience and all that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, and like you said, I mean, all the natural disasters on top of, and those are horrible enough, but then having COVID, on top of all that stuff is just kind of complicated things. And we were talking before we started recording just about how the necessity of people coming in and just walking alongside of them, and sometimes it really is that just lending an ear to hear about all the stuff they're going through is a huge thing, in addition to cleaning out their home. But they also need someone to talk to, because loneliness and anxiety and all that stuff is going crazy right now. And so that's really cool what you guys do. So.
Yeah, we try and focus on, when we're looking for who to serve in those situations, we try and focus on elderly people, people in situations of poverty, people in who maybe don't have insurance. And one of the things that we've just found over and over again is that we're dealing with people who just, they need their house cleaned out, but they really, elderly people who haven't seen. I was chatting with a lady in Louisiana just a couple days ago. I was stopping by to check in on her because we'd served her this last summer, and she just needed somebody to talk to. She has been pretty well isolated from COVID and not being able to work. And then, 3 different hurricanes came through her area over the summer, and my ministry for that day was just sitting and having a Coke with her and listening to her story. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do.
Absolutely. So we got a bunch of youth pastors that are youth workers that are listening to this podcast, and they're probably wondering, like I see all the time, like people are asking, where can we go on service trips and mission trips and things like that. So what kind of opportunities do youth workers have with Hope Force International?
Specifically, right now, our main opportunity is through our Appalachia outreach. If you go to our website, hopeforce.org, there's a section on there for Appalachia. My good friend and colleague and actually predecessor at my previous church, Brian, is he oversees our Appalachia outreach, and it's just a great opportunity to go and to mostly construction based, but to go and to love on a forgotten area. That whole region, for many reasons, coal mining is significantly reduced and has been automated, and so you have an area that was built entirely on the back of coal mining, and then that industry is very different and very much smaller than it used to be. And so you have, again, people in conditions of systemic poverty, really feeling forgotten and left out, who in just homes that are in terrible shape. So we have opportunities for week-long mission trips. That's, like I said at the beginning, that's how I first got connected. We have an outreach in Haiti. Right now, it's pretty hard we're not scheduling any trips for that because that's pretty hard to get in and out. And we do have an outreach in Mexico that we will long-term start planning trips from there. But really the first opportunity is Appalachia, and it's just a great trip going there. In a lot of ways, you almost feel like you're entering into a third world country within our own borders, which kind of creates its own experience and really stops to make you think that people within our own borders are living in conditions like that.
Wow, that's really good. And then on top of that, you guys do your relief trips that are pretty much for the most part spontaneous, depending on what the need is out there. So I know some youth pastors, maybe they have the ability to, let their churches know about what you guys do on a bigger scale, outside of just youth ministry. So how can churches get involved with you guys and start to send people and things like that when a natural disaster does arise?
So we have a network of about 2,500 trained volunteers that we refer to as reservists. We train up individuals who have a heart to serve in these situations. It's not for everybody. You're walking into some pretty difficult situation. Most of that training has to do with your own emotional and spiritual readiness to walk into situations where everything is leveled. When I went to Louisiana this summer, there was no water, there was no electricity for almost a month, and people were just devastated. And what you see, what you experience walking through the grief with people is pretty overwhelming. And so we train people really for, we can teach you to tarp a roof and to muck out a house on the job, but we want to train you to be ready as ready as anybody could be to experience what you're going to experience. So we'll have trainings coming up for people who would have an interest in becoming a reservist. That's really how I ended up getting plugged in. And then also we have, and that's up in the air right now, as so many things are with COVID situations and that, but we are working on some of that. And then we also do, once we're established, we also do accept volunteers. So if something hit in an area that you really had a heart for, and you had a desire to bring somebody or bring a couple people, we can always make that happen. We're trying to increase our volunteers and our reservists simply because we run out of volunteers and people long before we run out of work. And it's really heartbreaking to call people up and knowing the situations that they're in, and to tell them that we can't help them because they have enough, because we don't have any more people. So we're really working towards that. And certainly if anybody if that sparked anything, I'm sure I'll be sharing my contact information and all that here at the end. I mean, I'd love to chat with you about that, just even if you just wanted more information, because there's a big need for people to come and to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important for people to hear what your what your business model, or I guess, or whatever your financial, situation, when they come to help, let them know, like, because I think this is a fantastic sort of situation. And I think it helps people when they hear that it's actually not a ton of money out of their own pocket to be able to go and help Hope Force.
Yeah. So when we deploy in disaster situations, you're responsible to get yourself to and from wherever it is, and then we take care of everything once you're there. So housing and food. Now, you're not going to be staying at a 5-star hotel. You're probably going to be sleeping on the floor in a classroom at a church, very much like your own church. So you'll want to bring an air mattress. But we take care of feeding you and of housing you. So it really makes it accessible for people to, if you can get yourself to and from, we've been serving this week in these last 2 weeks in Texas after the deep freeze down there, helping people get water back. If you can get yourself there and home, we can take care of you once you're there, which for me was really appealing when I was in the situation that maybe some of you are, where I had a heart to serve, but I didn't have a big old fat wallet to send me wherever I wanted. I could usually get myself somewhere, whether it was driving or flying, or somebody in my church who had a buddy pass or points or something. I could usually work, if I had time, I could usually work something like that out in order to get there. And then I was covered once I was there, which was a huge help.
That's cool. That's cool. So yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunities where, whether it's getting, your own youth group involved, or getting other people, other adults within your church involved, or maybe it's just youth pastors out there that are thinking, you know what, I want to give back. I don't want to serve like yourself, Aaron, that just kind of sought that out yourself and started helping out here and there when they had a little bit of extra time. That's really cool. So let's take a little bit of a turn, and you got an opportunity now with at least 5 more years of youth ministry under your belt since our last chat. So what are a couple tips that you'd like to share with other youth workers out there that are listening today? Maybe it has to do with kind of your own situation, or maybe it's just a couple other things that you kind of picked up along the way that you think all these other youth workers should definitely hear.
For me, kind of being on the outside, your ministry to parents is equally as important as your ministry to their students. Um, it, it goes without saying, but it needs to be said again: clear communication, planning ahead of time, just keeping parents in the loop. I think parents, I can speak for us, and I don't think we're isolated. It's a hard go right now to be a parent with just all the different technology things we're dealing with, and being on the other side of having a student in a youth ministry makes me, I wouldn't say regret. That's not a fair word, but makes me wish I had been better at communicating with parents. That I made that an intentional part of my ministry, because it's just I don't know how best to describe it other than it has become very clear to me how vastly important that is. Um, Whatever that looks like, whether you seek out, I think I probably shared the first time I was on this, to reach out to families, to parents, and just say, hey, how can I serve your family? If you were to take me out for a cup of coffee and you asked how you could serve my family, I will talk your ear off and you will be my hero. And I made such good connections with families of students when I was doing that, and that has been reinforced tenfold now that I'm on the other side of it. I just can't, because you can get insight on what's going on with the kids that maybe you didn't understand. You think but again, you have the kids for an hour and a half a week, and they have them for the rest. And I think really for me, the other big thing that I would say is, and again, kind of comes out of some of my deficiencies, is the importance of taking time to be prayerful for each and every student by name. It sounds cumbersome, but if your ministry is too big that students aren't being prayed for by name, then I think you're missing out. I just feel like with everything that kids are going through currently, it's unlike anything I have ever witnessed. I got started in youth ministry in 1998, and it is just a different time. And I just think it is a time that people in student ministry need to rely on the Spirit of God more than ever. You know, clever programs are out the window in 2020, and big budgets are out the window. You can run your youth group off a Zoom subscription. And so if you have a $50,000 budget, that's a lot of computers. It's uh, all that stuff. I feel like this has been so refining, and just the importance of prayer for individual students and for their families as they're navigating all the identity stuff that has gone rampant in our world, and then has been magnified by isolation. I just feel like these students just need somebody going to God on their behalf, kind of stepping in when they don't want to. I think there could probably be some real biblical basis for being a stand-in for somebody else when they're not there, and to be able to say, I'm going to go to God on your behalf. Maybe you don't care, maybe you're too distracted, maybe you're too overwhelmed, whatever, but we can be an intermediary. And something about that has really resonated with me over this last year, because if nothing else, it's revealed to us just how powerless we are. And maybe we thought we were pretty good because we had a lot of numbers, or we had a successful this or that, and that's certainly been me at times. But it's just been pretty clear of how helpless I am as a parent, how helpless I was as somebody in student ministry, and kind of revealing what the reality actually is. And so those are the two real light and easy things that come to my mind.
No, that's so good. I mean, we could have separate podcasts about each of those things for sure, because they're so important. I think so. Aaron, I know people are going to want to connect with you. I think you're not the type of person that's going to come on here and ask for money. So I'm going to ask for it for you. So I know
I will oblige.
So I know that all you guys do is dependent upon individuals and churches that are just supporting and feeling like they want to be a part of that mission. So how do people get in touch with you? But also, if they do want to help out and financially to Hope Force, how does that happen?
Yeah. Easiest way, honestly, nowadays, social media is pretty taxing for me with my role. Easiest way is an email, Aaron, Aaron.Stetson, Stetson, @hopeforce.org. That's going to be the simplest way. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm not super responsive. There's a lot going on there, and it's just become a challenge. As far as Hope Force, finding more about what we do, it's hopeforce.org. And then, anybody who either as an individual or think maybe you got, missions at your church that has some interest, either for me as an individual or just the work of what Hope Force does. That's just so essential, so helpful for us to continue forward in serving people, because statistically speaking, natural disasters are on the rise. And for whatever reason, that's happening. And so we're just in a place where we're needing to respond more than we ever have. Hope Force was founded in 2003 because at that point we were looking at, man, these things are just coming faster and faster, and there's not a lot out there. It's grown a little bit. There's some wonderful other organizations that are out there that we partner with sometimes. But hopeforce.org, there's a little blue button in the top right-hand corner, says donate. There's a drop-down menu where you can choose designation, staff fund. We have the different relief efforts that we have. And then, again, if people want to support me, there's a comment box. You just write my name and then Hope Force Staff Fund. It's pretty self-explanatory. And, most of you may or may not have heard this, but monthly giving is most helpful. Anything is welcome, of course, but monthly giving is super helpful, just in the fact that it helps as a family. It helps us budget to know, okay, we got this much coming in that we can bank on as a family to just kind of keep moving forward. So those are the real key. Poke around our Hope Force website. There's we're in the process of looking at rebuilding it, because it is a little bit dated, but there's a lot of great videos and information on there about our work and what we do, and we really try and highlight stories of some of the people that we've served. So you could find that all on there, all the resources for that.
Cool. Cool. Well, Aaron, it has been great to be considered one of your friends over the years, and it's been awesome to see what God has done in your ministry and your life in New Hampshire, and now what He's continuing to do for you and through you there at your work for Hope Force. So, thanks for being a guest on the podcast, and may God bless your ministry.
Thanks so much, Steve. You too.
And thanks to all of you one more time for listening and tuning in and sharing this podcast with others. If you would be so kind, please make sure you check out our sponsors' websites. Head over to gshades.org. That's gshades.org. And you can download season 2 of the G Shades Youth Ministry Curriculum, and be sure to use the code UNITED. That's UNITED to get $5 off of your order. And also head over to minhubsync.com/SMP. Again, that's minhubsync.com/SMP for Student Ministry Podcast. And you can just check out all that MinHub has to offer over there, but also sign up for their sync service. And when you do that, you also are helping the Student Ministry Podcast. So thanks so much to G Shades and MinHub for sponsoring this episode. Also, thank you so much, Aaron, for being on the podcast. If you want to check out all of his links, they will be in the show notes, along with all of our sponsors, along with all of the social media links for this podcast. All of that is going to be in the show notes for this podcast, so make sure you check that out. You can also head to thestudentministrypodcast.com, or you can even head to stevecullum.com, and you can find the links for all of the podcasts there, and all the links in the show notes there as well. Lots of different places for you to find all of that information. The next podcast, episode 67, I'm really excited because I'm gonna be able to talk with a different type of interview than we've had before. Someone that in a way I've never thought I was going to be able to get to talk to, and some connections that this person has that I'll just kind of tease right now. But you definitely want to check out episode 67 when that drops in just a few weeks. But until then, thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode, and may God bless your ministry.